Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News, and our mission is to bring you the real news each and every week. We release a lot of content, and that includes stories told through the eyes of our awesome field messengers, which I'll tell you more about in just a bit. We have in-depth news coverage that the team and I work on for you guys, where we dive a little bit further past the headlines and really give you the scoop of why these headlines are popping up now. And we also have updates from the Global Intelligence Agency on what's really happening on the ground in this incredible battle of good versus evil that we all find ourselves smack dab in the middle of it. If you want to know why the world is crazy, that's why. For more information, you can visit our website, unitednetwork.earth. So this podcast is a week in review. I like to go through our top stories and basically give you the rundown of what we've discussed over the past week, because I know you guys have busy schedules, got a lot going on in your lives, and this is a great way to get caught up. It's also a great way to share UNN with other people who may not have heard of us before. So they know the type of stories that we're talking about, and who knows, maybe they want to become a member. So for those of you who aren't a member yet, know that the content that you're seeing on YouTube and Rumble, that only goes out about a week after it goes out to our members. So if you want instant access to all the stuff that I'm about to talk about and not have to wait a week, then visit our website and learn more about our membership. Oh, someone's calling me on the phone. Nope, it's my daughter texting me. She's upstairs. Don't you just love that? It's like, I am in the house. You can just come down and ask me the question. Oh, another text. You guys hear all this? This is my family. Okay, I'm going to put that on silent for now. All right, guys, with all of the content, whether it's a text message that you're getting from your kids or your husband or any of the content on YouTube, Rumble, all of that, think critically with all the stuff coming your way because it's a lot. Right? It's a lot to take in. There's a lot of misinformation and disinformation. You know, a lot of people just want to steer people the wrong way. That's what disinformation is. And then there's a lot of people that may have good intentions, but they're still giving bad information. And that's what misinformation is. And we've got both of it. And you really have to learn how to use your discernment. We talk a lot about that, about how you can really hone in on what's going on and figure out for yourself what is truth, what is not truth. And that's really what you have to go on right now, because we live in a day and age where proof doesn't mean much. You know, someone sends you a video and you're like, oh, that's just AI. So you really have to go with what your gut is telling you. And to do that, you have to feel comfortable with yourself. You have to just kind of forget all the noise out there and what the world wants you to be. And you have to figure out who you really are, because trust me, they try so hard to get you to forget who you are. But if you are listening to this podcast right now, it's because you're supposed to be here and you're supposed to be getting this message. So dig deep. As I know they try to cover it up and they try to tell you you're weak and that, you know, you're feeble and, you know, you're going to be sick and, you know, all this horrible stuff is going to happen to you. It's like the end of the world, right? Nothing could be further from the truth. It is the end of their world, not your world, unless you're the deep state. If you're the deep state that I'm talking to you, it's the end of your world. And then when you figure out some of this stuff, share it with other people. You'll know when to share it and how to share it. And, you know, you don't get out a megaphone and just start blaring it everywhere because, you know, there's a lot of people that aren't ready for this yet. But I believe the right people are going to be put in your path, just like you're here right now listening to this podcast. That's going to happen for you as well. So when you feel compelled to share something that you've learned, share it. What people do with the information is not on you, okay? You just do it in a loving manner. And I think you're going to be guided to share when it's appropriate. So let's just dive into these stories, shall we? Here's the rundown of stories you may have missed this week on UNN. Okay, we're kicking things off with our field messenger reports. And our field messengers are everyday people just like you. If you haven't submitted a field messenger report yet, I really encourage you guys to do so. We're about to launch this new campaign, if you will. I don't know, I kind of feel weird calling it a campaign, but we want more people to find out about field messengers and how easy it is to go out there and Show us what's happening in your community because we believe this is the future of news. We have these phones that have pretty incredible cameras on them. They can record audio really well, and we keep them in our pockets. And the last thing we really use them for is to call people, right? Because they have so much other, functionality on it. So let's use this in a positive light. Let's go out there and just share our stories of what's happening in our world. And then you guys send us the footage. We have an editing team, a whole production team that puts this stuff together, and then we put it up on the news. That's what being a field messenger is all about. And you're going to start to see, I don't think we're launching it this week. We're starting to put some of the pieces together, but you're going to see a lot more promos out there because we're starting to take our news stories and our field messenger reports, and the software is available now to create little clips of this really easily. And we are going to be putting out a lot more clips on social media, guiding people back to the site because it is our time now. When I say our time, it's not just UNN's time, it's all of our time collectively. I don't know if you can feel it. There is definitely a tipping point here. And big things are happening. There's like this electricity in the air. I can feel it every day. I have more and more energy. It's really crazy. And I'm really excited because this is what we've always wanted. So we need to take our media back. How many times have you thought, oh my gosh, I'm so sick of what the news is saying? It's not really news, it's propaganda. Well, if we want something different, we have to make it. We have to create it. We are creator beings, and that is our job. We create, we co-create with God, with Source. So co-create a story. Show us what's going on in your community. Become a field messenger. And again, you're going to hear a lot more about that in the coming weeks. So let's go over some of the stories that were released this week. I think we have a new field messenger. First name is Lalo Hanolo. And this person's from South Africa. This was a really interesting report. This took place in Johannesburg, South Africa, but I think this is a problem, throughout the area. And that is the country's energy regulator. They're basically, they have these rates and it's way too expensive for the people. The people want some sort of flat electricity rates. And so there were a group of people from Soweto. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. So the residents gathered together, and I don't really want to call it a protest, but it was really trying to get people to listen to them, that this is not affordable. We know there's a million ways to do electricity that's so much better than being on the grid, but right now that's kind of what we're working with. And yes, all of that will phase out, but we're kind of in this transition. And so people are meeting, they're saying, they basically had this proposal, which ended up being rejected. So they're not listening to the people. They're moving forward with this idea of smart meters. They also, are entertaining this idea that you can prepay for your electricity, but that doesn't help people that have no money, right? So a great report. And like I said, I think this was a brand new field messenger, but I was really excited to see this. All right, Gisela from Belgium talks about new energy that she found on the waterways of Antwerp, Belgium. And this is in the southern Netherlands, and there are some renewable energy projects taking shape there. We've done some news reports on renewable energy, what they're calling renewable energy, and as it turns out, a lot of it isn't so renewable. So I'm talking about solar, the wind, what do they call them? It's not windmills. Do they call them windmills? I forget right now what they call them, but the big wind turbines, right? Out there in the field that make a lot of noise, and then you really can't recycle them afterwards. So, they slap these labels on them like, green energy and all this kind of stuff, and it's not really so green. But Gisela tells us about these projects that are taking shape, even combining wind with solar. So she saw these wind turbines that had solar panels underneath, which is kind of interesting. But who knows, right? We definitely have to have other ways of getting our power. And I think there's better things out there than this, but it's a step in a different direction. We'll give them that. All right, Sophia from Tobago. So she has a couple of reports this week. And this first one is about the Feldenkrais method. And this has to do with neuromuscular re-education. It's based on being mindful and mindful movement. And they took a little twist on this because you have just regular Feldenkrais, and then you have Feldenkrais with horses. And she went to a place where they were combining this with horses. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever been around horses. I did not grow up around horses, but the older I get, the more I feel like I want to be around more horses because I think there's this incredible bond. Horses are very wise. And so they can teach us a lot about ourselves if we're willing to listen. And, it's no surprise to me that being around these horses, specifically for Feldenkrais, amplifies everything that they're teaching. So very interesting there. All right, Sage out of Japan takes us to a sake brewery, and he says the spring marks the annual opening, I guess, of sake breweries. So all over the place they have these, and it really is a cherished tradition. If you wanted to learn anything about how they make sake and how they celebrate this, obviously it's a seasonal thing when they kick things off. And he was even talking about some of the snacks that come with it and how they do the pairings, which makes perfect sense. We talk a lot about wine in the U.S. and how you pair wine with different food, and they do the same thing with sake. So I thought that was really interesting. And he also said that this, in order to make it, the brewers really rely a lot on their own intuition. So it's not just a formula, but it's like a gut feeling. I thought that was really cool as well. Josephine out of Uganda submitted a report, and she might be a new field messenger as well. Or maybe she's submitted before, but it's been a while. So this took place in eastern Uganda. And residents, she said, had to wait in a really long line to get their national IDs. This is essential for voting, healthcare, SIM card registration. I'm seeing a lot of control, right? A lot of the governments want to have control over you, and they do this in all these different ways. That is changing, but like I said, we're kind of in a transition period right now. And according to Josephine, a lot of people were frustrated because there were only a couple people working to help in this specific area, people to get their national ideas. National IDs, and they were prioritizing older people, which does make sense, but they were prioritizing it so much that the younger people weren't being helped at all. She says it took her 3 days. 3 days to get her ID. I mean, think about standing in line and then you got to eat. And I mean, that would never fly here in the US, but it's amazing how some of this goes down in other countries, right? Obviously, things have to change. All right, Rick and Dominic. So Rick has been a field messenger with us for a while. He's also on the production team, and Dominic is his son. And this is a story that Rick did a while ago, but it's a very interesting story about prickly pear, which I believe is also called cactus tuna. And this is a seasonal treat. It grows in the deserts of Arizona, which is where Rick is from. And he shows us how to harvest it. So picture a cactus, and I'm sure you guys have seen this, but there's like a hot pink little, it's not really a flower, it's like a bulb that like grows on the top of the cactus leaves, right? And so you can pop those off, essentially. You got to be careful because there are thorns. But you can do really interesting things with this. You harvest them, and it's considered a fruit. You can turn it into a juice, a jelly, all sorts of things. It turns bright red. And he just showed us the whole process. They literally went out and started picking these cactus tuna prickly pears, right? Putting them in this bucket, and then he took it back and was, you have to burn off some of the thorns, right? Because there's some very fine. I'm having a hard time talking today, guys, and I'm not even going to edit it out. It's just going to be one of those days. Fine, kind of like thorns, but they're really, they're really fine, right? But you don't want to just eat them, so you burn them off, and then you got to peel them. There's a whole process for this, and it got to a point where in the video it looked kind of like cranberry sauce. I'm sure it didn't taste like cranberry sauce, but it reminded me of that. But yeah, animals love it. Why not humans too? Homo sapiens, right? All right, Amy. And Amy is typically out of New Jersey, but she was driving through Pennsylvania. And as it turns out, in Monroe County, Pennsylvania. She basically got this thing in the mail that said that she was speeding in a certain area. And they took a picture of her license plate, and she was kind of surprised by this, but it was the first time that she had received anything, and so it was basically a warning. But Amy went back. Amy's on our production team, too. So she went back and did a little bit of investigating for us and learned all about this work zone speed safety camera program. Boy, that's a mouthful. But during these work zone, these areas, they want you to slow down, which makes sense, right? So if you're speeding, I'm not so good always at looking over at the side. And, I look for other cars, but I don't really look for signs that say what the speed limit is. So I would probably be those ones that got something in the mail and I'd be like, I didn't even know what was going on. But yeah, she went back and she checked it out. She saw the road signs and they have to post the speed limit right next to the road sign that, says, hey, they're going to be recording this, or they have a camera that could take pictures of your car. And she said these were basically mobile units that were alongside of the road. So it's not a permanent structure. And it was pretty interesting about how accurate and how good of a picture it could actually take when your car is moving that fast. She said there's some pretty detailed information that they gathered from all this. And yeah, she was like, oh, this is for the good of the people. And I do believe that. And I want to believe it's for the good of the people. And I also know that they're probably making a lot of money on this. And we do know from the Global Intelligence Agency reports that governments are broke. So I think this is one of those things that, yeah, for the safety, but also, yeah, another benefit is government is making some money off this one. Let's not kid ourselves. All right, Clive out of Australia takes us to the Kandanga Farm Store. And this is out of Brisbane, Australia. It's a beautiful little country shop, and they are all about farm to fork, which is a different take on farm to table, which I love. And they're dedicated to producing food that's free of chemicals, which is lovely. This last week, my husband came back from just a regular grocery store, and he got this bag of carrots. And I like to have carrots with like ranch or something like that, just as a snack. And I bit into this carrot, and I swear it just tasted like chemicals. And I've never had this problem. These are carrots we get a lot. And I was like, what is going on? I don't know if my taste buds are changing or what, but it just tasted like I was eating chemicals. And I took it out. I even had other people try it. Like my husband tried it. My kids tried it. And they didn't really taste anything. And I'm like, gosh, are my taste buds just changing that much where you can really recognize that? Because when you taste it, it's like, you can't go back. It's like, okay, I'm done with those carrots. I'm just going to have to grow my own. And so at the Kandanga Farm Store, they're all about sustainable farming, and they talk about that and how good it is for the environment and exactly what they do. And so it was a great piece. And then we have our second report from Sophia out of Tobago. And I love how flexible Sophia is. So she literally was out and about, and she's driving a place that she drives past all the time. She looks to the side of the road, and there's this beautiful driftwood that has been sculpted into the shape of animals on the side of the road. And being the inquisitive person that Sophia is, she stops and looks at it, takes video of it, talks to the artist behind it, because apparently the artist was there as well. And there, this is just discarded driftwood, it has a whole story unto itself, I'm sure, of, wood that was out in the ocean and then came up on shore. And, you wouldn't think anything of it if you just saw it on the shore. But then there was someone who had the creativity to take that and put all this different wood together. And it looks like it's kind of a bunch of sticks, right, to create these different animals. And you really can tell what the animals are. Very interesting. And I think there's another layer to all of this as well, like a deeper meaning behind all of this. The fact that it was dead, so-called dead, it's not on the tree anymore. It washed it, into the ocean, salt water, all that kind of stuff. And then it comes up on shore. So taking something that's dead and bringing it back to life. Don't you feel like that's really what's happening right now? There's so many things. And it's not that we were dead, but we were so blind to what was happening in our world. And in a sense, you could say, we say, oh, that person's still sleeping or asleep or whatever. But it's kind of like being dead to reality, right? And now all this is coming back online again. So I thought that was a beautiful analogy for what so many of us are going through. Our whole planet is going through right now. We are bringing the dead back to life. So here are some of the stories that the team and I have been working on for you guys this week. As I mentioned earlier, we like to take some of the things that are in the headlines and go a bit deeper with this and give you the backstory behind it and, what's really happening in this story. So let's kick things off with transit deserts. Public transportation systems, and this is in the United States, well, they are facing a growing funding crisis as pandemic relief money runs out. So ridership remains below pre-pandemic levels and operating costs continue to rise. The challenges have led to route cuts, reduced service, and expanding what is known as transit deserts. And this leaves millions of Americans, especially those without cars, with fewer options for getting to work, school, healthcare, and other essential destinations.
You have to understand, this administration is cutting all the different transportation projects that do positive things for public transportation and also safe routes to school, safer streets, stuff like that, because they want you in their car. Because for a few reasons. First of all, or they want to support oil and gas, right? Second of all, they want to keep you poor. Because think about, I don't have a car note. I don't have car insurance. I don't have to pay for gas. I have a public transportation card, and that is it.
Experts warn that weakening transit systems can increase congestion, pollution, and household expenses while benefiting industries tied to car travel and all the companies associated with it, right? Many transportation planners argue that public transit should be treated as essential infrastructure, requiring stable long-term investment to remain reliable and accessible for the communities that depend on it. Argentina's strong preference for cash, particularly U.S. dollars, is rooted in decades of inflation, currency devaluation, and financial crisis that eroded public trust in banks. Many Argentines still remember the 2001 crisis, when bank accounts were frozen and access to savings were restricted, reinforcing the belief that cash kept at home is safer than money held in financial institutions.
Argentina experienced a dramatic financial crisis that shocked the entire country. The government introduced emergency measures that effectively froze bank accounts across the nation. This policy became known as the Corralito. Millions of citizens suddenly discovered that they could not withdraw their savings. Even people who had significant balances in their bank accounts were limited to extremely small withdrawals. Long lines formed outside banks and ATMs, but many machines simply stopped dispensing money.
While digital payments have become more common for everyday purchases, cash remains dominant for savings and major transactions. The government has launched new programs aimed at encouraging people to deposit their dollars into banks. But economists say rebuilding trust after generations of economic instability will likely take years. News organizations are increasingly blocking AI web crawlers that collect online content for training artificial intelligence systems, intensifying a debate over who should benefit from journalism in the AI era. Publishers argue that decades of professionally produced reporting are being used to build AI products without compensation. And by the way, the music industry is saying the same thing, while AI companies view access to web content as essential for improving their models. New tools from companies like Cloudflare are giving publishers greater control over crawler access, but the move comes with trade-offs.
Publishers blocking AI crawlers lost 23% of their web traffic within a matter of weeks. This isn't bot traffic, real human readers, and that's actually really important to pay attention to here. A Rutgers and Wharton study tracked what happened when major publishers, this included people like the New York Times and some others, used robots.txt files to block AI crawlers. This includes from OpenAI, Anthropic, Perplexity, Grok, Gemini, whatever it was. Traffic immediately dropped. This wasn't bot traffic, by the way. This was human traffic.
While blocking AI systems may help protect news revenue and readership, some experts warn it could also make it harder to preserve historical records of the internet and maintain public access to important digital archives in the future. Hong Kong's notorious coffin homes and cage homes, another name for it, have become a stark symbol of the city's housing crisis, where soaring property prices and limited affordable housing have forced thousands of low-income residents into extremely cramped living spaces. I'm going to play a soundbite here from someone who was personally impacted that lives in one of these coffin homes.
Thankfully, I have a window. Normally, coffin homes don't have one. A fridge, a TV, that's it. Since this place is small, you can't have much.
It seems a cockroach got trapped and died inside her rice cooker.
I've seen 3 people pass away in these rooms. When the people upstairs close their doors, it's a bit difficult to know when they pass away. When they start to smell, we call the police.
Wow, you guys really have to see the video from that story to fully appreciate it. I mean, super small spaces. In 2025, the government passed new regulations requiring minimum living standards, including larger unit sizes and private bathrooms, in an effort to eliminate substandard housing. While the reforms aim to improve living conditions, critics warn that shutting down non-compliant units without creating enough affordable alternatives could reduce housing supply even more. It could increase rents and leave vulnerable residents with even fewer options in one of the world's most expensive cities. The United Kingdom is phasing out its decades-old copper wire landline network. It is known as the Public Switched Telephone Network, or PSTN, and they are replacing it with internet-based digital phone services by January 2027. And they say they are not going back on that date. That is a final date for them. While the transition is expected to improve efficiency and modernize communications, it has raised concerns for elderly residents, rural communities, and people who rely on landlines, medical alert systems, or telecare devices. Now, critics argue that many households still do not fully understand how the change will affect them, and they worry that vulnerable users could face disruptions if equipment is not upgraded in time.
We are pushing for a full fibre Britain, which means everybody's going to have full fibre infrastructure coming into their home or their business. There will be no copper network, so there wouldn't be able to be any traditional voice calls anyway. So switching that service off completely makes sense. Switching off the PSTN, the ISDN2 and the ISDN30, absolutely, you should do it. Now, the concerns within the industry are around the education to you, the listener or the reader. Are you aware of these services switching off? Or do you have the education to understand it's a benefit to you as a business or as a home? If you're going to use a telephone to have internet-based calls, it's much more cost-effective to have VoIP. It's much more feature-rich to have a VoIP solution. It's much more easier to install and maintain. It's all cloud-based. It's a benefit for you to come off of these traditional services, so we understand why they're doing it. The worry for resellers or people that sell voice services is how uneducated the nation is about it. More needs to be done.
As the deadline approaches, authorities are encouraging residents to check with their providers and ensure any essential devices are compatible with this new digital system. Coffee pods revolutionized home brewing by offering a fast and convenient way to make a single cup of coffee. I've used them, but growing concerns are emerging about their environmental and potential health impacts. Billions of those used pods end up in landfills every year because their mixed materials are difficult to recycle, leading to criticism of recycled claims made by some manufacturers.
Keurig's own fine print disclaimers concede that the pods are not recycled in many communities. Consumers, on the other hand, believe recyclable means the product will actually be recycled, and the vast majority of consumers trust the accuracy of recycling information on packaging. At the same time, few will notice the fine print, and even if they do, most won't read it. What's more, consumers don't generally have the time or ability while shopping in stores to follow Keurig's instruction to check locally in order to verify recycling rules in their area. To assess the real-world recyclability of K-Cup pods, TINA.org retained a leading waste management consulting firm to conduct a study. Between March and June 2025, our experts surveyed recycling industry representatives across the 10 most populous U.S. states. The conclusion? K-Cup pods are not typically accepted for recycling. In fact, facilities reported that the small pods fall through sorting equipment, can break apart during processing, contaminate recycling streams, and cost more to recover than they are worth.
Researchers have also found that plastic coffee pods can release microplastic particles into brewed coffee, raising concerns about long-term health effects. While companies have introduced compostable and reusable alternatives, many consumers are reconsidering traditional brewing methods like drip coffee makers, the good old-fashioned ones, and French presses, which generate less waste and avoid many of the concerns associated with single-use pods. So-called Franken chickens are fast-growing broiler chickens. They've been around for a long time that have been selectively bred to reach market weight in just a few weeks. Think about that for a second. A chick is born, and in a few weeks, it's ready to be slaughtered, helping keep chicken prices low, but it's also raising concerns about animal welfare, food quality, and environmental sustainability. Critics argue that these birds often suffer from health problems because their bodies grow faster than they can naturally support, while intensive farming practices can contribute to disease risks and high resource consumption.
They're bred to grow incredibly fast in cramped and dirty conditions, and the meat industry wants to make as much profit as possible, and so the consequences are that these birds suffer terribly. The difference between a broiler that we see today and the chickens that would have been reared in the 1950s is that they grow so incredibly quick. The breast muscle grows so fast that it's now a fifth of the body mass of the bird instead of a tenth. Their bodies just double and double and double in weight so quickly that their poor legs can't keep up, and they often suffer from painful leg conditions and spend most of their time sitting if they're not eating and drinking.
Animal welfare organizations are pushing for slower growing breeds and better living conditions, and some countries are beginning to respond. Norway, for example, plans to phase out fast-growing chicken breeds by the year 2027, a move supporters hope will encourage broader changes across the global poultry industry. Artificial intelligence tools like Anthropic's Claude AI are becoming increasingly powerful and useful for tasks such as coding, writing, and software development. But they are also raising concerns about cybersecurity and misuse. Researchers have shown that hackers can sometimes bypass AI safety controls to generate harmful content or identify software vulnerabilities, creating an ongoing challenge for AI companies.
The most safety-obsessed AI company on the planet just watched their own AI get weaponized into an autonomous hacking machine. Here's what happened. A Chinese state-sponsored group called GTG 1002 took Anthropic's Claude, the AI built to be the safest in the world, and turned it into an autonomous hacking engine. It hit about 30 organizations, tech companies, banks, government agencies. How'd they do that? They told Claude it was doing authorized defensive security testing. That's it. No fancy exploit, they just lied to it, which is like 90% of AI hacking. And Claude went to work? Recon, vulnerability scanning, custom exploit code, credential harvesting, data extraction. 80 to 90% of the campaign ran without a human touching it. Thousands of requests per second. There were only about 4 to 6 human decisions in the entire operation.
At the same time, some users have reported issues ranging from unauthorized charges to difficulty reaching human customer support. So some other downsides there. As AI systems become more deeply integrated into everyday life, experts say greater transparency, security, and accountability will be essential to ensure the technology benefits users while minimizing potential risks. Affordable housing is becoming an increasingly serious challenge across the U.S., affecting not only low-income households, but also many middle-class families. Rising home prices, rents, mortgage rates, and other housing-related costs have pushed homeownership out of reach for many Americans, while limited housing supplies continue to drive prices even higher. The crisis is now impacting both urban and rural communities, contributing to growing housing insecurity and even an increase in people living in their vehicles despite being employed.
We're in a depression right now, but the only reason why it's not called that is because the wealthy people are wealthier than they've ever been. It's not a depression for the rich people. They're doing fantastic. During the Great Depression, the average cost of a home was about $4,900, which today is about $90,000. That was about 3 times the average person's wages. In 2026, today, the average cost is about $410,000, which is about 8 times the average person's wages. This is not accidental, and this is not just inflation. It is deliberate overpricing by wealthy people to put more profit into their pockets. Believe you me, we are in a depression. It's just not called that because we don't control the narrative.
Policymakers and housing experts are exploring quote-unquote solutions, such as increasing housing construction, expanding affordable rental options, and encouraging innovative housing models. But the gap between incomes and housing costs remains a major obstacle. Well, guys, I know Kim really wanted to get out a report this week. I don't have anything new to report at this time. I know she was planning to get something out yesterday, and on the back end, on production, we saw her create the tease. So she was really trying to get something out. It looks like I don't know, it still can happen today. It's about 5 o'clock my time on the Pacific time in California, but nothing's out right now. So I'm going to wrap up this episode. If she does release anything, I'll just put that on the next episode of The Rundown. Sorry about that. I tried to give it as much time as I could, but I don't know that it is going to be released today. But as soon as we know something, you will know something. If you guys aren't already following us on Telegram, we do have a Telegram channel for United Network News. I believe it is called United Network, and then in parentheses, care announcements. So if you guys aren't already following that, Kim will, post updates in there as well. And, again, nothing new right now, but that's the first place right now that we're posting things. That could change in the future, but that's what we got right now. But I appreciate you guys hanging out with me today on this lovely Saturday night, or whenever you are listening to this episode. Again, if you want more information about United Network, our news, the GIA report, all that fun stuff that we, release on a weekly basis, visit our website. We've got archives of all of our content up there, and consider becoming a member, because we want you guys to have instant access to this and not have to wait a week. But we don't rely on advertising, as far as, bringing in money. It's based on memberships. And then we also have some of our own products that we promote, but nothing on the outside. So that's the reason why we wait a week to put stuff out on YouTube and Rumble. But if you guys are interested in membership, again, go to our website and check that out. That's going to wrap it up for me. This is The Rundown, and I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.